Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is habit. That should be a fun one to be exploring. What is habit? What does it look like when it's supportive and when it's not? But before we get started, let's take a minute or two to settle in and get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clear, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy. And as you exhale, exhale any tension or stress, negativity, fatigue. And let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant bright light lighting you up from the inside out, sparkling through all your molecules, all your electrons, all your cells, lighting you up from the inside out. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension or stress, fatigue, or negativity. And now let's just gently press our palms together. Softly, softly, softly rub your fingers against your palms and feel how delicious it is to be here with these physical sensations that are really quite magical when we allow ourselves to connect. So welcome, welcome, welcome. It's Friday. Good morning, Lisa. So glad to have you here with us. Maggie is here enjoying her breakfast. Um, and we're talking today about habit because we talk about good habits and bad habits and how some habits can support us and some can be debilitating. I was thinking about habit and even the good habits. Um, I think even with the good habits, it's important not to allow ourselves to be slaves to them. When we have a habit rather than it having us, then it can be a really good thing. Good morning, Dennis. Welcome. So good to have you here, and happy Friday to you as well. Um, Maggie's very happy today. Um, uh, let's look at habits. So I'm in the habit of making my bed when I get out of bed. I make my bed typically, and sometimes I don't do that. And I think that when we get acclimated to certain habits, I'm just thinking about like leaving my bed unmade. The somehow it doesn't feel, it doesn't feel as complete, or the room doesn't look as nice, or when I walk into the room. So so that's one of the reasons that I make the bed, is because I like the way it looks, but it also is a ceremony of sorts with which I complete my sleeping cycle, or like close out the night and move into the day. And it's really interesting to be thinking about what the function of these habits is. So Rosalind says, good morning. Good morning, Rosalind. Great to have you here. I am a creature of habit. I thrive on routine. But yes, realizing if, for instance, not having the ingredients on hand, I'm thinking there's more coming. But to be a creature of habit, I think that there's some security that habits can provide, that we can gain a sense of comfort from certain habits. When those habits become entirely mindless, when we just do things because we don't, without thinking, without being present. Like, habit gives us an ability to kind of not be present in a way. um, and while at the same time it gives us an opportunity to anchor, so um maybe like mindfully engaging in our habits is probably a very different experience from just doing something on automatic pilot. And even the best habit, when it's on automatic pilot, when the habit has us, then that's a whole different ballgame. Good afternoon, Hope. Welcome, welcome. Great to have you here. So we're talking about habits, and not just good and bad habits, but how we interact with habit. So, there's a certain comfort, I think, to the continuity that habits can create for us, the illusion of continuity, the illusion of control, of consistency. And so by engaging in certain habits, we allow ourselves to experience a sense of continuity, I think. And there's a comfort in that, right? S- there's some comfort to predictability, or at least the illusion of predictability, right? And so that's something that our habits help us to engage with, I think, is to experience some of that comfort. Now, there may be habits that we're not happy with, and I looked up the definition of habit, as I often look up the definition of these words to see uh, what the dictionary has to say. And the first definition of habit was to have a repetitive behavior that after a point becomes almost involuntary. And that's where any habit, what we call good habits or bad habits, any habit that gets to the point of being almost involuntary, is something that I would encourage us to become more mindful about. And if we have gotten to a point where the habits are involuntary or almost involuntary, that's when we get to challenge them, I think, because we want to be at cause in our lives. And I think it's quite possible to become a victim almost. I don't love that word, but to become a victim of our habits. And I'm thinking of habits not just in behaviors, but we also have habits of thinking. And we have habits of thinking, for instance, about ourselves. We have our self perception, and maybe we have habits around the ways that we speak to ourselves, or we have habits about the way that we react to things, like the knee jerk reaction. And we have habits of how we interpret experiences. So, for instance, if we have a habit of um, lack of self esteem, or we have a habit of self criticism, then a result of that habit is that it becomes a filter for our experience. And so I I I don't know if it's a new concept or not, but to think of insecurity or depression or anger or even joy. I mean, I'm not just talking about bad habits, but all of these ways of being can be habitual. And I think it's really important to, like, if we recognize that these patterns of feeling not good enough, for instance, is something that lots and lots of people experience. It's actually a habit. It's a habit of thinking. It's a habit of a way of being. And And we do have the ability to change our habits. So Lisa says, that's me at night. I get up and eat during the night. When I was ill and I on this chemo drug, I had to eat 30 grams of fat to take it 3 times per day. I have to get up at 10 p.m. and eat. It's been years, but I can't seem to break it. That's really interesting, Lisa. First of all, again, what a journey through the chemo, and I never knew about the dietary uh, adaptations that had to be made to be able to sustain or to support the therapy. So, wow. And, you know, I think that one of the ways that we get to break habits or change habits, let's even say change, is to recognize what the motivator is for the habit. And my suspicion for you, Lisa, is that that habit is tied to staying alive. You know, that pattern of getting up to eat the fat, the 30 grams of fat that you needed to consume 3 times a day was very much tied to your survival. And I would imagine that on some level, this pattern, this habit is part of a drive to stay alive. And so that might give you an inroad into how you might address shifting the habit, like other things that like being more conscious about what you can do to support yourself to stay alive and to to consciously and deliberately move forward into healthy patterns. So just a suggestion, but I'd be curious to know if that resonates for you. So our habits often have any behavior actually, and most of our behaviors are habits. Lisa says, wow, I never thought of it that way. Yeah, so what happens is I believe, and this was something that I was taught and adopted, and you know, my one of my many hypotheses about how things work is that every behavior has a positive intention. And initially, that behavior has a positive intention. And what happens is over time, the need for that behavior may shift. And what was once a positive behavior then becomes a negative behavior or a life-limiting behavior. So for example, let's say we're growing up in a household where if we speak out, there we don't know what the consequences would be. The consequences could be violence. The consequences could be intense criticism. And so we learn not to speak out. The positive intention of that behavior is to protect ourselves, to protect our well-being, right? And then as we are no longer in that threatening environment, we still have that behavior. And what can happen is that if we're trying to be in an intimate relationship and we don't communicate and we don't convey what's really going on for us, then that can destroy the relationship that is giving us the sense of safety and comfort and support and love that we very much desire. So when we look at what the positive intention is of the behavior, it gives us greater access to not only understanding the behavior, but potentially to be shifting it. So even the worst behavior, like for instance, explosive anger. It may be that there was a situation that was very threatening, and the way to defend against it was through explosive anger. But then once that true threat has passed, the behavior's still there, and the perception of threat could still be there as well. And then we have this reaction of explosive anger to try to protect ourselves, right? Whenever there is a threat. However, that explosive anger can then accelerate an altercation or a conflict as well. So I think it's really interesting when we look at the brilliance of our being to come up with creative ways to handle things. And then once we have it wired in our head that, oh, this works, then somehow that wiring gets hardwired in. And then it feels like we don't have any choice anymore, that we just have these reactions. Good morning, Isabel. Welcome, welcome. Great to have you here this Friday. We're talking about habit and changing habits and good habits and bad habits and what we what kinds of inroads we can make to transform these habits as well. Lisa says, I noticed that with my weight. I was abused as a child. So when I lose weight and receive male attention, um, and receive, it says make attention. So I'm not, okay, that's what I guessed. When I male attention, like let's see, I noticed that with my weight, I was abused as a child. So when I lose weight and receive male attention, I like it. And then it says, I like it for a minute or two, but then I think it scares and it threatens me, and I start eating and gaining again. This is a recent revelation now to work on that. Yes, and Lisa, okay, so in your situation, it's doubly compounded because you lose weight, you get this attention that ends up feeling really uncomfortable and threatening because it harkens back to being a kid, right? So the gaining weight is a way to not have that kind of attention. And you also have this eating pattern that kind of, I would imagine, that makes it difficult to lose weight, which is also tied to survival. So somehow and I think the weight issue is so common for people who have suffered abuse, because the weight represents multiple things. First of all, maybe it makes us less appealing. Okay. Secondly, it's a way to hide. It's a way to buffer ourselves, to be putting on this protective shield in a way that it's metaphorical, but it actually shows up physically. And so I think it's very, very common that people who have suffered abuse have issues with weight, because we want to armor ourselves, right? We want to protect ourselves. And the weight serves to do that, not only by making us potentially less attractive to predators, which isn't necessarily true, by the way, but it's sort of a psychological dynamic, but also by kind of arming ourselves and armoring ourselves, putting up this force field between us and potential threat. So when we recognize that these habits and behavior patterns and patterns of being. Understand that our ways of being are habitual as well. You know, we have our ideas of who we think we are. And in truth, those ideas are really nothing more than habit. You know, that those ways of being are nothing more than habit. We have such a much more vast potential for expression than we have any concept of. You know, I'm very excited to share with you that I'm going to be going finally, after having registered over a year ago and having it canceled by COVID. I am actually going to be attending, barring any unforeseen circumstances, I'm going to be attending an advanced week-long workshop with Joe Dispenza in Cancun from June 7th to the 13th. So that's a week where we'll be doing replays, I'm imagining. Anyway, I'm really excited about it. But one of the things that Joe Dispenza says, and I'm aligned with that, is that we are gods in the flesh. And we have unlimited capacity that we have not even begun to tap. And it takes other dimensions of awareness and dehabituating ourselves from who we believe ourselves to be able to access these other dimensions. Isabel says, it's my weakness too, still not in control of it, the eating and the weight thing. And I can say that that weight has been a lifelong thing for me. I used to get a lot of unwanted attention and had put on a lot of weight and always really struggled with my weight because, again, for these things that we're talking about, where it was a protection and I didn't feel like I had control over it either, you know, and I still notice, um, fluctuations in my weight. So Lisa, saying, Maggie, we miss you. Maggie's here, but she's eating my plant. So I'm going to grab her and bring her right back, hopefully. Come on, Mag. So now she knows that I chase her when she's on the plant. So she flies off the plant, but she stays away from me. Come here, Maggie. Come here, baby. Maggie, come on. Everybody wants to say hi to you. Come on. She's being very coy. So anyway, we can shift these habits. Part of it is to become conscious. When we are moving into a habitual behavior, what's happening is we're kind of going unconscious. We're kind of becoming robotic, you know, where you get a craving. And for instance, with eating, another reason that people eat, come here, sweetie, come on, here she is. There she is. Another reason why people eat compulsively, for example, I had that pattern of compulsive eating. Another reason that people eat is to bury their feelings, to try and find satisfaction, to try and find some comfort, because maybe as kids, when we were feeling bad, we would go out and get some ice cream, or we would get some candy. I know for me, oh my gosh, candy was my thing, and ice cream. And there was comfort, you know, it was like there was this deliciousness and this wonderful sensation and momentary pleasure in eating these things. And that compensated in some way for the emotional pain that I might have been feeling. And so the eating can be a way to also tamp down those feelings that are so uncomfortable. And Lisa says ice cream is my thing too. Well, I have been vegetarian and vegan uh, to varying degrees for a while, and as a result, I cut out dairy a while ago, and that has saved me from my addiction to ice cream. Sometimes I have cravings for it, but I started making sorbets at one point, and that was awesome. I haven't done that for a while though. But anyway, we have these foods that it's such a sensual, sense-based experience to eat these foods. And now I don't know about you, but I recognize that initially the first taste or the first several tastes are so good, but after a point, like I in the past especially, and sometimes even still, have found myself just eating reflexively, and then the deliciousness of whatever it was that I was eating sort of disappears, and then it's not even as pleasurable an experience anymore, and can also move into a punishing experience, like Lay's potato chips. The you can't eat only one, right? Bet you can't eat just one, I think was their catchphrase. Well, they've engineered those foods, and this is true. They've engineered those foods to be addictive, to be stimulating the chemistry of our brains and bodies in such a way that we keep eating and keep eating and keep eating. And once in that pattern, it's hard to break it. And then what happens is we feel bad about ourselves afterwards. And as with any kind of addiction, right? And the foundational behavior, sometimes it's best to just avoid the thing that triggers us, right? That stimulates that obsessive behavior. Maybe it's the emotion that stimulates the obsessive behavior, but there's a moment where we kind of go into automatic pilot, where something triggers that switch that then lets us move into this robotic behavior of habit. And so I think that the beginning of changing our habits is recognizing what the positive intention is, and finding other things that fulfill that intention, and maybe supplant or try to start creating a new habit. Maybe the habit is feeling our feelings, rather than stuffing things down, which is what we often do. For instance, when it comes to eating. Um, anyway, with any kind of habit, I think it's good to shake it up periodically, and to confirm and affirm that you have the habit rather than the habit having you. And Isabel says, just realized as awakening over 1 year ago, just understood it is emotional eating. Since child been sex abused, the emotional eating started in 20s, so nobody would bother you. Exactly, Isabel, that I'm so sorry that you guys have experienced this kind of abuse. And the behavior is so common. The behavior is so familiar, to be having these behaviors, to be having these protections, eating through to protect ourselves from emotion, creating this outer shell to protect ourselves from the onslaught of abuse, and also to potentially hide within this bigger frame to make ourselves less attractive or less visible to unwanted attentions. So I I don't find it an accident that people who have suffered abuse often are the people on a path of awakening. Maybe I can say it the other way around, because I think it's more common that the other way around, that people on the path of awakening have often suffered abuse or have often had deep trauma, and they have searched for ways to navigate a world that made no sense. And so lots of us have embraced a spiritual path to heal that deep, deep wounding. And so it's no accident, it's no accident that that folks in a spiritually oriented community have a lot of pain to heal from. And certainly deeper self-awareness is a powerful path to healing, and consequently also to our evolution. So interesting how we get to recognize that our pain is the incitement to our awakening. Not that I wish that it weren't that way. I just suspect that for most people it is, because we want to find ways to not be in such pain. So there again, so Lisa says, a lot of these revelations I've had come due to my awakening as well. I had a reading and a lot of people came in and issues were made real. This literally changed my life. Too bad it didn't fix my weight. Well, so it's not, it's, I think the weight thing is really complex. I really do. And there's all kinds of self-image stuff attendant to it, um, self-blame, shame, uh, fear, guilt. It's not a once and done easy fix, I don't think. But part of the weight thing too is finding self-love regardless of the weight, like not hating our bodies, finding a way to love our bodies, whatever shape they are. And I think that self-acceptance is one of the biggest keys to shifting the weight experience. It's like finally coming to a place where we love ourselves and our bodies regardless. That gives us more latitude to be able to let go of some of the protections, to be able to start to feel safe. That's another thing. A really, really big thing is to feel safe inside ourselves. And as we feel safe, we allow ourselves to be more expressed in the world. We allow ourselves potentially to release some of that armor. So Elaine says to be healthy and truly loving ourselves as is unconditionally. Yeah, and that is a long road for a lot of people, to be loving ourselves and accepting ourselves and appreciating ourselves. And when we do that, we don't, I think we, whether the weight falls off or not, we allow ourselves a greater vulnerability when we're loving ourselves, when we're trusting ourselves, when we're aligned with ourselves, we're not in fear. um, the other thing about being in fear or under threat is it's physically changing our metabolism and our adrenal system and all the kinds of chemicals that are happening in our bodies that kind of hold that weight there to protect us too. So as we feel greater safety, our chemistry changes as well, and that enables us to release the the protections because we don't need them anymore. So wow, wow, wow. What a conversation, folks. Thank you so much. I honor you so deeply for your vulnerability and your candor and your participation. I'm so grateful to you for the richness that you bring to these conversations. Really powerful. And I think I'm going to make it color wrap for the week. I'm Mira Rubin. This is Maggie. Oh, Elaine says, before I wrap up, Elaine says it's a journey, not to the destination, as each journey offers so much if one is willing to shift their perception, their beliefs, and go in a different direction. Not easy, but can be done. Yes, set oneself free from fear. Exactly, Elaine, and that's what we're up to, is looking at new perspectives and how we empower ourselves and empower others also by a simple shift of perspective. So with that, I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and Maggie and I go live each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. And we're on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page. It is always a tremendous privilege to be with you. So have a wonderful weekend. Please check out the other awesome programming on the Enlightened World Network pages. And I will see you, I hope, next week. Lots and lots of love.